Music has always been a part of who I am. Doing this work to share these almost like heart secrets. Millions of people over hundreds of thousands of years have made a sound with prayer in their heart and mind. Be a professional, be a professional, be a professional. And all of a sudden I launched. It was like an initiation into my own power. You know, the goddess I work with really primarily at this point is Lilith. And they're like, okay, so we're all going to gaslight you and tell you that you're an awful person. And she's like, yes, still no.
And I'm going to do my own thing. Like, I'm not going to sit here be what you want me to be.
It really felt like a deepening past that gate of the feminine. All of the women that we are a daughter of Lilith, and that we have this trauma to process.
And I was going to say, she carries the shadow of the culture, the perception of the, dangerous feminine. She is one of the prime holders of that shadow. What we all really want is to be seen for who we really are.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Annalisa with Journey to the Goddess, where I regenerate ancient feminine wisdom for modern women. Today, I'm with the wonderful, the fabulous Kate Ryan. Hi, Kate.
Hello, darling.
Kate is a dear friend of mine, and she is a singing oracle, and she has such a powerfully magnetic voice that really channels the healing powers of the divine feminine. And she's also a very talented artist, a theater actress. And that is how Kate and I got to know one another when we were in a production of Medea in Seattle eons ago.
That's how we met. Yeah. I forget that life.
That's right.
Oh, and that was mythology that you do now, Medea. Oh, man.
That's right. Oh, I can't wait. That is a part I want to play one day too. I'm ready.
Yes.
I'm ready. And I've been like, as I'm studying, I've been like tacking information about Medea, and I was like, this is going to revolutionize how people understand Medea. But we're not there. Not ready yet. I got to finish the dissertation.
After that work.
Do that play. I'm like, I'm so excited.
Yay, I can't wait, girl. You know me, I'll sink my teeth in.
I know. Oh my God, that would be bomb. Some kind of like bloody menstrual art Medea performance.
Yes.
That would be cool, considering how they considered her to be like a barbarian.
Right?
Yeah.
New light on it.
Yeah. Did you ever see Pasolini's Medea?
I don't know.
The famous opera singer Maria Callas plays Medea. It's so powerful. So thank you for being here, Kate. I'm so excited to have you here to kind of pick your brain and gush all about the feminine today.
Yeah, we have great talks. So it's nice to it's fun to let everyone else into our slumber party moment.
Exactly. Our afternoon tea time, except I don't have tea, but that's okay.
Oh, I made some weak ass coffee. I've got it. I should always coffee with you.
So let's start with probably the most pertinent question. What does the feminine mean to you? When I talk about the feminine, whether that means divine feminine or energetic feminine.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Like my first thought was something we were speaking about earlier. This image that someone had shared with me, and I can't remember who it is. I just always think Bob Ross whenever I think of painting. So we'll all just imagine that Bob Ross is telling us about this right now. This is nice. But it was to consider that we often find a lot of duplicity where masculine and feminine is in nature and in like spiritual and ritual. Sometimes beings or elements can be both. And so with that kind of in mind, this idea that we could consider the feminine as the literal paints and the paintbrushes and the masculine as the hand. Mm-hmm. And that there's this relationship between the two to creation where when this very young child, they might take these paintbrushes and mash them in the paints, and you're kind of screwing up the paintbrush a bit and you're making mud out of the colors. But over time and commitment and awareness, is like, emotional sensitivity. You begin to respect the paint and the paintbrush, and also you understand the relationship to them. That if the creative force, the energy, the idea, right, putting into form, has to have a mastery, which then we go to play on words, the difference between mastery and control, where control is a false sense of, I think it's false comfort, this idea that like I have control over anything, versus mastery of something, which is I understand my relation to it
Right.
and the how we engage together. And that may actually have shift and change and fluctuation. And as we see, we can talk a lot about like the masculine and feminine and like those buzzwords, patriarchy and shit like that, right? But that doesn't mean that patriarchy means man. It's this like system. It's much more straight lines or rigid thoughts, structures, and the feminine is then again has that balance of softness, flow, and curve. It
Right.
also is not afraid of the dark side, and I think for the masculine, the dark side can often be seen in war, and I believe that for the feminine, a lot of the dark side can be seen in birth, in that death and birth are so close there, as in passion and death and conviction, right? But I mean, these are like words like darkness or light, which I don't know, I'm striving for like different words because I think that they confine us to a certain value.
I think they're super problematic, and I think they're also attached to a worldview, a lot of patriarchal worldviews. So they come with their baggage, and it's hard to talk about them without that baggage.
Yeah, because I've had this real deep thought recently that through many years of different kinds of plant medicine, I've had certain experiences. But then also the last few years, I've been doing a lot of work to be here, right, in this body, in this moment, and to have the ability to sit with deeper thoughts without needing other entheogenics. And the last, I mean, it's like we are in lockdown 2020, going into winter. Whenever you're watching this is where we're at. And something that I've really been sitting with is this idea of this true yin yang, that there is the core of the masculine in the feminine, and there is the core of the feminine in the masculine. So I guess to sum up, what is my ideas or feelings or vibes about the word or the term is that it's not exclusive of anything, and it's not one defined thing, but it's part of a way bigger fabric of things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I actually think that's a beautiful way of looking at the feminine, as like it's undefinable or indefinable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unforgettable. It's like, you
That's a
don't even know.
great
You
thing.
don't know why you need this. You don't know, but you just do.
So, but or and, not a but and I want to say there's a feeling sense energetically, that's a feminine, that's clearly a feminine energy when it runs through the human physical body, that I felt that, I mean, we can talk about the difference between, feminine energy and femininity, the construction
Right.
of femininity and what it means to be a woman and to be embodied in a woman, and how those things are different or separate, or, we
Just
can.
like patriarchy being men, femininity is not about being feminine or female. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there is an interesting connection between, being embodied in a female body and what we call the feminine energy. But the feminine energy is so much bigger than anything we could ever
Right.
embody, because it's like it's bigger than physicality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you describe what that feminine energy is when it's like coursing through your body, or what that experience is like for you when you're
Hmm.
channeling that energy?
It's a real neutrality, honestly. And I think that that's really what it feels like. It feels like my words, a Pisces moon. I don't know if they're right, but like a multiplicity and a neutrality all at the same time.
Mm.
And I feel this when I do the music or when I would facilitate other like entheogenic plant medicine ceremonies, you know, where you're like tapped in, even though I still like have a lot of skepticism. I love skepticism. It's like my favorite way to approach anything.
Yeah. Healthy.
Like, give me the science and like let me walk around it before I even get close to admitting I believe anything.
Girl. Yeah.
Right. So that in mind, it's like I keep getting into these zones or these places, these ephemeral moments that are very liminal, where it's like I am full of this omnipresence. And I think that, well, in one very specific ayahuasca ceremony, I asked a lot of questions. And I actually entered the ceremony very petulant and like an angry fucking teenager. I was like, I don't even understand what the fuck. When you often go into these ceremonies, you experience an amplification of whatever is existing for you at the time. And I remember literally in my mind saying, why would you do this? Just thinking about humanity and cars and global warming and all of it. I was just like, well, like a teenager would like, oh my God, why would you fucking do this? This is the worst. And I would blacked out. And I thought I had blinked. And I kind of was startled by the sound of a woman singing in my, what is the right ear over the right shoulder. And actually I was seated by a man, so I was very confused. And I realized when I kind of came to that I'd been blacked out for a couple hours. And you can kind of track that in the way that they run the ceremony. Like, we're definitely at a different part. So I realized also I'd sweat through all my clothing. So I was sitting upright for a few hours, totally blacked out, just sweating. And that's kind of a cool, just like side note for what can happen when you're experiencing these healing ceremonies. It's not always like visual.
Right.
Right. So I woke up and I apologized because I was like, oh, I quite literally thought I was too big for my britches. And I asked a question I wasn't ready to understand. So would you please answer me how? Like, how? And what I felt where I went was this very Northern Lights experience. It's like not a shape or not a form, but very much the way that the electrons and the neutrons and things, this like polarized magnetic energy has the static in it, right? And it was only through this like development of an own conscious self, like when we talk to ourselves, this personification of this consciousness that was obviously becoming very lonely. Only through this personification of this being over again, this right shoulder, this right ear, which other people tend to have this experience too, of this like multiplication, the way that cells, you know, you see them like that.
Yeah.
And it really, if I can feel it so clearly, it seemed like this unisex being for the very first few split moments, very much. And it was only as it came through my periphery into my sight was there this shift and this feeling of that's masculine, I am feminine.
Interesting.
But it was like the way you can stand on two sides of a room and you're like, you're over there and I'm over here.
Right.
Right. Then there was no separation. There was like a still a holding hands of it. And it was just about this witnessing and the seeing of the other more than it was about a polarized separation of the two.
I really love that. I mean, when I read or what I have read in like the Upanishads or some of the Gnostic literature, I mean, I think that that's really like the mystical understanding is like there's like the concept of the oneness of everything that is. And then like in order for this oneness, some people call it God, to know itself, you have to have differentiation.
Mhm.
It's like the fish that's in water doesn't know it's in water because it's in water. It doesn't
No,
have
and then the
anything else.
greatest joke is they went on, and well, they went on, and what I saw was like, she's not like, "Oh my god, I'm so excited, there's someone here to hang out with me." It was the joy of her having witness, right? Of this reflection, this thing that I think humans are very uncomfortable, like having someone truly see you.
Yes.
Right. But she didn't give a fuck that this person was seeing her or what they thought of her. Right. It was, I am being seen, and the joy of that was reflected in their eyes. So
Mm,
just the joy of witness and being witness. There was like, I think this is a balanced ego moment, right? Is this non attachment, but yet we're all still connected.
right.
And then they thought, how many fucking different ways can we do this? And it felt like that the galaxy was like boo, 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 and I watched this like thing happen where then I was inside the chaos of the universe, and as I was inside our solar system, there are comets and there's trash and there's satellites, and like Jupiter was like whoosh right by me, and then it felt like a puppet, like I got pulled out to see that there was this beautiful, like a clock,
Mm,
like all the layers of what's happening is part of this big dance to just like cover every fucking experience, every label, everything possible.
wow.
And that's it. That's all we're here doing.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Back to the music for a minute, because there are a whole bunch of good things that you said in there. And I want to also stress that you spent a lot of time in the jungle training with teachers, learning traditional ikoros, and
Mhm.
also what I really loved when I sat in ceremony with you, or well, I loved many things, but like, you know, how you can cultivate and bring forth the energy of the mother, Aya, in that
Mhm.
and but you do it in a way that's accessible. For example, you sing other songs too. You sing these other beautiful mothering, feminine, nurturing songs to create and hold the space for, the people in ceremony with you. And I don't think, I know that that's a real gift. It is a
Mhm.
real gift. And not many people have that. And so I not only just want to share that with you, but I think that I'm kind of curious what what that experience is like for you when you're in ceremony singing, whether it is the Ikaros or the other songs that you sing.
Yeah. Well, it's like always, music has always been a part of who I am. And well, there was a time where I was trying to kill myself. I could say glibly, but really, honestly, I was like drinking a lot and I was smoking 2, 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Like I really had thought I couldn't have this and do this. I couldn't. It wasn't going to be a thing, so I might as well not. And the irony of getting so fucking sick that the only answer is finally to go to the jungle.
Mm,
But what I did is I got so sick that I started doing all the things as a poor starving artist that I could afford, which was going to any kind of free workshop or in trade. And I started to really find these alternative, right, like teas and herbs. And then people like talk about crystal therapy and Reiki. And I started attending Sweat Lodge and meeting people who were, doing this work in ritual and in music. And the drumming was a part of that, right? And then I met somebody who's doing plant medicine, like these fire circles. So people had done plant medicine, but they're just gathering in community around the fire and sharing. And that led me to start just like keep working with other people doing this work to share these almost like heart secrets.
mm,
It's not like we're trying to keep it secret, but we're carrying this when someone looks hungry for it. You're like, I'd love to give this to you. And I found a few people that offered a few of these moments that gave me hope. And that's what I think a lot of plant medicines and other things might not always totally fix us, but they give us hope or a tool.
mm.
And so I started actually following through some divine accident. I took a workshop with a woman who did crystal bowl healing, right? And then she did toning. She had like tones for the chakras, and she started talking about like what these tones were and the form of them. And I'd never heard anyone really talk about cymatics, which is like the shape of sounds in sand over plates, right? So, well, I don't know the dude, but forever ago, probably someone will laugh and be like, it wasn't that long. This, I believe it's a German violinist, put sand on a metal plate and then started drawing his bow. And what he noticed was that these shapes would come out consistently over and over and over again with the same tones. And so now we have a whole study that shows that leopard and tortoise and all of these like shapes, leaves found in nature can be replicated through sound.
Wow.
So hello, quantum physics, everything is vibration. Everything is vibration. And then, it's like wild to this place where then I start studying like what can sound. And really the first thing that got me was this conversation that it doesn't really matter what or where or how. One, it's about the vibration in your body. Two, if millions of people over hundreds of thousands of years have made a sound with prayer in their heart and mind, this goes into a collective consciousness. And I believe that when I make this sound, that I am drawing all of their prayers.
Wow.
So what I wanted to do was find music from a few different lineages that could be, I'm not like trying to bring this in and be like, this is my song for healing for this thing, but I'm bringing in like the entire indigenous community and all of the people, right? I'm bringing in every Westerner who's ever owned in a overpriced Lululemon fucking class, right? It's worth it. One of my teachers is like bleach, gasoline. It's everything on the earth that is the earth, is made of the earth, is medicine. It's just how we use it.
Right.
So I wanted to be able to bring that in. And I also believe that the reason that everything's shifting like it is and the internet's happening and all this shit, right? Like people are coming from many different traditions and lineages. And I like to have coffee with my people, right? I like to like have breakfast and coffee. And if you come hang out with me, you're gonna do like a meditation, a yoga class, like you're gonna do all kinds.
Yeah.
But that's how that's how I'm a fly on the wall in the room. And I hear or notice what something might mean to someone, and I'll know that like, oh, Anna has a real passionate connection to like the feminine Indian goddesses.
Yeah.
Right. And like sometimes I do use that information. But then there's a whole nother part that plays, which is like the genius as a spirit versus me as a vessel.
Right.
Because then what happens is we say that like old school Greek Roman would be like, well, genius isn't a quality of being, it's a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my job to practice my tools. So like vocal warm-ups, vocal health, endurance, whatever the fuck I'm doing, play my scales.
Yeah.
And then when I sit down to create, I have to fucking trust that this genius will show up. And that's the music for me. That's like every spirit, every prayer.
You know what's so weird? I was thinking about the muse, the Greek muses, as you said that, and then you were like, "That's the music," and I was like, "Oh my god,
My
she said it right as I'm thinking it."
Yes, people hate it. They're like, "You're so corny," but I was like, "It's my music."
Oh, so it was intentional. I was like, "Oh my god, okay. Oh my god,
I love
yeah,
it's totally there. It's right there. It's right there. And like the Shipibo are so beautiful. If you look at any fucking ayahuasca or any kind of like plant medicine artwork, you're going to see lines and patterns and lines and patterns. We see this in traditional Chinese medicine, in the nadis of, the energy, all these like lines, the chakras, is that we are lines. We are a woven tapestry, this like crazy three-dimensional. And so like if you were to go to sit with a Shipibo maestro curandera, they would call in their plant medicine masters, right? So they call in their genius, they call in there and they use their tools they know, and what they say is they're going to straighten your lines. And they're going to use their music as medicine to where these lines are crossed and they need to be straightened. So that's us using vibration to meet vibration.
interesting."
Yeah.
So when you're doing ceremony, is that also one of your goals?
Yeah. So you hear me do a number of things where I'm doing these things to like call in, like literally making certain sounds and tones before I go into full song. I'll often hum and like kind of pitter patter around.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining myself as a magnet and a light. And I have a couple that I work with very closely that I'll call in, and I really wait to feel them. And I joke with people, if you're listening, you'll hear them drop in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it could take a few minutes. So, like, especially if they know I'm going to be at it for like 8 hours, for a full something, they'll wait like 15, 20 minutes.
No, I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know exactly the moment you're talking about.
Yeah, it becomes that's that channel, like an overtone or something happens. People say they hear like multiple voices almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then what I love to say, the gifts, right? They say like if you heal people or you heal, or you get healed, or gifts. Yeah, it's really like there's a better language around it. However, I do realize that when I show up with people and I commit to do this, that inevitably there'll be a moment where some song comes out of nowhere. And
Mm.
I've never heard it before. I've never sung it before. And I know that these people that have had these experiences with me where I feel like it's a gift that I'm getting this song that I'll get to carry on in my lineage, because this being, the spirit, this ancestor really wanted to connect or communicate to this person who was being so brave to
Yeah.
show up here.
Yeah.
And that's my gift for helping and showing up in this way.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll take all those gifts.
Yeah. It's like co-creative in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll turn to me and they're like, did you know? How did you know? The thing that you sang about? And I'm like, no, I had no clue. No clue.
I love
But I've learned to get out of the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's also the lessons of the feminine. The
Yeah.
healthy feminine is getting out. It's both co-creative and it's getting out of the way. Like the
Yeah.
opposite of control.
Okay, so I haven't given birth to anything, but I've been in the room for a few. And there's many moments where you have to like not push. You have to just surrender to it and have the most epic faith and trust.
Mm,
And then there's moments where like you have to be ready to be engaged completely.
yeah.
And we see this in athletes. I think we see this people preparing for a big speech, for like a PowerPoint presentation. You're practicing your tools before you have to get up in front and give the speech, and you can't control what's going to happen during that speech.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like I think that's like maybe that's one of the things that's drawn both of us to acting too.
Mm.
Is like you create that you cultivate the tools and then the muse
And
comes.
then,
You hope the muse comes when you're on stage.
yeah.
You let go of control enough and that you built a strong enough container.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, doesn't it feel good when you like catch a real live raw moment?
Yes. There's
Oh.
nothing that beats that. Trigger. And it's like you're like in the oneness of the universe.
Yes. I will never forget. We were doing Henry V and Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And I was Mistress Quickly, and I was doing a bar tavern scene, and I had a whole sword fighting, and I don't fucking know how, but somehow I ended up with the sword in the wrong hand, right? And
Okay.
if you've ever done stage combat, it's a choreographed dance.
Yeah.
So we're going through the moves, and all of a sudden I got it in the wrong hand, and it was like the dude and I went to what, and we looked at each other, and we looked at the sword, and we looked at each other, and I like threw it and caught it in the other hand, and we like boo boo boo. And the whole crowd like woke up, like they were about to fall asleep, right?
Yes.
But they woke up and they jumped up and they were like, yeah, like it was
That
a
moment of genius. Wow. Oh,
yeah.
beautiful.
And I was like, I'll retire after that. And you can't recreate that moment.
That moment, that theatrical moment that I think it impacted me enough, but I know because I remember it still, and it's your moment. Um, But I think it also, correct me if I'm wrong, was part of the beginning of your spiritual journey, your like really deep spiritual journey, was when you were on stage with maybe on the board, no, the theater company you were working with from, and you were doing spinning in circles for a long time.
Yeah, that I did pop the fuck off at. That's exactly it.
You were like hearing things, and so you had a spiritual experience when
Yeah.
you were doing that, correct?
Okay, so Implied Violence
Hmm.
was the original group. We all kind of went to college together, right? And then we kind of like they had a shift in power and directors, and it became Saint Genet. And I mean, 2000, I want to say 2012 or so, maybe we started doing this thing, and this shift happened, and we went from being a very much more of like a performance art fringe experience to a ritual ecstatic experience. And the director decided to start really focusing on different trance techniques. He was very interested in cults, like Georgetown and all that shit. Very interested in like what that is. So we started to do this work, and each of us had different kinds of qualities or things that we would do, right? Our language, right? And so there were dancers, and there were, all this like visual artists and stuff. And what I did, I was the voice. So I ended up carrying over this concept of the veil. Like the veil was something I found in 2010, and it was a character who was there was a lot of like abuse and shame and self-harm, but I found this veil, and I began to realize this like sacred clown, shamanic clown work. And so I started to fight to keep the veil, as even though we were changing the lexicon of what we're working with in the world, I found that I think there was like another step, right? It's like from the whore to the sacred prostitute.
Hmm.
So I then became this like idol, right, in this show. And I was seated on a platform that was raised, so like a plinth or something, right, that you'd see in like a museum. And I had this veil that covered my eyes and face, and I was anointed with honey, flour, and wine
Hmm.
over and over again, and sat there for about 4 hours without really moving. Right? And then I would get up and I would spin in the middle of the stage for about 45 minutes while I sang. And I'd never done that shit before, but I tell you, like, if I'm afraid of being embarrassed about failing at something, I'll just make it work. And I had no idea that that was like a Sufi technique, right?
Right.
I I mean, it's kind of seemed whatever, and I knew from some other stuff that like spinning sets your nervous system right and all this other thing. So I was like, oh, let's try it.
Sat for 4 hours and then you got up and spun for 45
Yeah,
after
like
being,
no transition time. You just walk down to the center of the stage and spin. So
wow.
it was very interesting because your body becomes almost atrophied in certain aspects,
Yeah.
right? As we continued this work, we were traveling, and so we started traveling, and I became very jet lagged. And we were in Austria doing a performance, and I was sitting on the plinth, and I've got my like bird cage on, and I'm like trying to like deal with the jet lag and not pass out because I will fall. There's like no, and I'm also supposed to be still, so you can't do the head jerk where you like fall asleep. And I was like, God forbid I'm in the center of the stage all the way up at the back. Like everyone could see me if I fall off this shit. And I'm like, be a professional, be a professional, be a professional. And all of a sudden I launched. And it was like the lights from the stage had cut through this veil with the honey dripping on it. And it's like I went through this rainbow and I was all of a sudden in this cathedral. And I was sitting on this wooden bench next to my deceased grandfather. And he was like, "You've got this, Katie Bug." And I was like, what the fuck is just going on right now? And that's about all the time I had before I felt like I came back into my body. Um, and then, I just continued to get sick and not have put these things together. And it was actually as I was getting really ill that the work with the show had toured for a few years. So we went back and forth, and I did this spinning on and off for like 3 years. And each time it felt like I had this upgrade, this like wake up, shake up moment. And the last round that we did it, I started speaking a mantra, and I felt that there really was this. I mean, now it's like everything is medicine, and that what I was doing there was like an initiation into my own
Right.
power.
Right.
Yeah.
I have this thing with theater, especially like modern theater, modern Western
Mm.
theater, especially, and it being very kind of entertainment aesthetic oriented, like in the sense where it's cut off from its spiritual roots.
Mhm.
So, like, when I went and I did that intensive training in India in classical Indian dance theater, and I understood for the first time that theater is a ritual, that it's a form of language, a communication of community members, which it tells the story of a community. And then I read this amazing book by this now deceased anthropologist called Victor Turner, and it's called From Ritual to Theater. And he was Scottish, and his mom was a Scottish actress in the early 20th century. And so he was really curious about the difference between like play and ritual in indigenous communities, and then how in the Western culture it became like this distinct art form, this aesthetic that's no longer about integrated into the daily existence of humans, but it's like through commerce and production, and something that's for the elites.
Because you notice, like, the joke is we have really special shit on our walls because we're not actually using it. It's behind glass on the walls, but actually that shit should be used in your daily life. Yeah, I say this about, there's a common thing that they say in Sweat Lodge about like praying to be a hollow bone, to be a channel. And I hesitated earlier when we talked about channeling because I actually don't think that the Western mind is ready or conditioned to be a channel.
Interesting.
I don't think that we live in a realm where spirit is integrated in our daily, and the ritual is it's like superstitions
Mhm.
are are everything, you know? Like
Mhm.
if I believe in a penny is lucky and I'm gonna lean into that penny being lucky, what I believe is happening is that my spiritual self, whether it's a higher something or angels, whatever the fuck believes, they're just waiting for me to believe in something so they can communicate through that shit.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, maybe before you pray to be a hollow bone to something, maybe you figure out what the fuck the marrow is and who you are and what we're really about. Because this is, I think, where religious dogma and emulation comes in, is people who don't have a deep tradition or connection, don't have that like already that structure.
Yeah.
And that we really need to figure out what that spirituality truly is before we can start channeling spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. There's almost like it is like a dismemberment. It's a deconstruction of your ego. I mean, everyone's always talking about the ego, but like basically who you think you are, your outer persona.
Yeah. Because like the ego is necessary, so we don't want to attack the ego, but to be like, I am bringing in this entity or this being and I am saying these words, like, no, you're fucking human. And in this time, in this place, we look at dramaturgy, our history of performance. We
Right.
can acknowledge we all have many different filters, like lenses we're looking through.
Right.
And people who have been through a long history of traditions, especially like oral traditions and these rituals and passed down, the more work that I tend to do with them, the more I understand this difference of like, in Western culture, I have been taught to go to a place of worship and be told what to, and then I take those words and I just repeat them.
It's disembodied. It's
Right.
right. It's not in
Yeah.
there at all.
But
It's
I
just
feel like my
yeah.
indigenous and native teachers, they want to help me understand, right? They're like teaching me how to hear these things for myself.
It's embodied.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So
Yeah.
there's a difference in people just wanting to show up and make this shit happen.
Right,
versus doing
exactly.
uncomfortable work.
Exactly, it does. It takes a commitment to the work.
I've had moments where I've shamed myself as a creator, all of us, because we are one in that sense, right? I can't just outside blame.
Right,
Then you also think about in moments where you are desperately fucking lonely
right.
and what you would give or do to have someone see you for who you are. And
And isn't
it
that
not even,
that's
yeah.
all
And it wasn't even about accepting or rejecting. It was just like,
that's all what we all really want is to be seen for who we really are.
yeah,
I don't know why we make it so hard on one another.
oh, just have not figured that one out yet. But like the fact that we're all still in this lesson.
I know. Which reminds me of the my octopus teacher on Netflix. Did you see that?
Yes.
Yes, I think
My
I know, I cried. It was like by the end, I was like, oh God, she died. No.
husband was crying halfway through, like knowing that she would die. He was just like he's like the biggest softie, especially when it comes to animals and children.
I know. Yes. Speaking of which, there's my dog going off. But I think that movie is a perfect example of just seeing and being seen, and they're not even the same species.
Right.
I think that's a gift that animals give us because we can't. It's so hard for us to really see and be seen by one another, but we can do that with our pets.
And like really the only turmoil was this human's narrative about what was going on.
I know his interpretation.
Yes. Yes, that's it. Though I did have a moment where I was like, cis white man, when he's like got her on his hand and they're like having such a good time, and then she gets taken by the shark, and I'm like, you just had to just take it too far.
I know. I know. I was like, save her, save her.
Why are you just, oh, now you're gonna sit there and be hands off? Oh, of course, good for you.
I know. I know.
Mhm.
There are plenty of examples in nature of animals saving humans, so you can get in there
Yeah,
and save her.
especially helping them build homes.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Save her.
go ahead, go ahead. Oh, I got a mouthful. I got an angry letter to write.
Oh my goddess, I love you so much.
You know, the goddess I work with really primarily at this point is Lilith.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because it's something that I don't like just go out there and talk about, and even I'll sidestep it because I think that people have such a negative connotation to one, they're uncomfortable with goddesses that demonstrate both positive and negatives, right? Like
Yeah,
Kali, even to a lot of people, they're like, oh, Kali, let alone Lilith, who is just like, fuck you from the beginning.
she was. I think too, there's just like a well, because we just don't know. There's a misunderstanding of it.
Right.
When we look at someone like Kali, it's really hard, I think, from a Westerner's perspective, to really understand Hinduism because it it's a cellular understanding. It's really difficult for most people to get what it actually means, any
Yeah.
aspect of it. And so of course, like when you're looking at a mother like Kali, like the destructive creative, is really hard for Christian minded people who are so obsessed with good and evil, which doesn't exist in Hinduism in that way.
Right?
Really hard for us to understand, yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're
I
willing to let go of your upbringing.
I just love this like idea that um that at some like what really whatever the stories are, what lands with me is this idea that she's like, you can create something and if it starts to harm itself, you're fine stopping it.
Mm,
And as we want to wrap back into the creative world as an artist, you have to be ready for rejection all the time. And if you're creating things like bringing stuff to the table, I might spend hours on a project and all kinds of money, but then you realize at some point it's just not on the right track.
right. That's right.
I don't know what it's going to do. I've had canvases or pieces of jewelry sit around for years. And then all of a sudden, I'll look back at it and be like, oh, if I take that piece off, I can use that piece for something else that is perfect.
Right.
But if I'm going to waste my fucking time tunnel vision forcing this thing to happen, we see it all the time. People choose to make something happen, make a job happen, make a move happen, make a family decision, and really everyone else is miserable.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why I always got it. I'm like, dude, if it's not working, let's assess this.
Right. It needs to be. It again brings us back to that kind of what we're kind of labeling feminine and masculine, the flow versus the trying to control something. Or like
Mhm.
mastery is understanding relationship and timing and flow, and control is trying to manipulate it.
Mhm.
Want it.
Mhm.
Actually, going back to Lilith for a minute, I actually think that with her, I'm just trying to think. I'm like, yeah, that's kind. She was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do my own thing. Like, I'm not gonna sit here be what you want me to be."
God, no. Like literally she was like, no. And they're like, okay, so we're all gonna gaslight you and tell you that you're an awful person. And she's like, yeah, still no. And also I've gone ahead and like light and love, bitch. Okay, light is knowledge. Light is when you turn, like Brene Brown, you turn the light on in a room, you realize where the fuck you are,
Mhm.
right? So she's like, oh, I'm gonna call the name of God and be like, bounce out. And
Yes.
I also think that she was never like a human, because there's like no one else that I know of that goes from like being a human to a demonic goddess.
Definitely not. I would say even from like my research, I would say she was always a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
She was never
Mm-hmm.
human.
I mean, if anyone wants to get really fucking nerdy or weird with me, you can go look up the Sumerian tablets and about like the creation of man, and there being like the seven sisters who were, even in the translations, people are like, we're not so sure this was consensual. Because we see it now, arranged marriages and things where it's like, this has all kind of been promised and this is what's best for everybody and you should go get married and do these things. And that it is consensual, but it's not something anyone wants.
Right.
Right. So there's in the Sumerian tablets, there's talk of these women having pressure
Mm-hmm.
to do this honorable thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that there may have been one who was like, fuck all of this.
Oh,
And
I can imagine, probably.
right.
Oh yeah, I can imagine, probably.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
then there's ways with that we had talked about earlier, daemon, which is the right term for a muse or genius.
Mm,
So we're being told she's like the queen of the demons or whatever, right? And yet I keep finding that if you dig deeper, the connotation of this word is not this bad or good
right.
thing.
Right.
And then play more and more with this idea of the sacred serpent, and that dragons and serpents are this like powerful divine feminine creation.
Yes. 100.
Oh, yeah. I'm seeing it all as like that divine chaos that people were just really uncomfortable with and didn't like it.
Totally. Yeah. No, I love that. And I'll just bring in one of my favorite ladies I love to talk about, Maria Gimbutas. Anyway, she really tracks the denigration of the goddess in her death-giving form throughout Western patriarchy there. And Lilith is one of those figures that kind of gets denigrated. She's like originally this really powerful, goddess of death and rebirth, and then, well, not goddess, but figure of death and rebirth, and then all of a sudden
Deity.
got this malevolent demon.
Do you know about have I told you about my friend who had the near death experience, and so then
No.
or like how this goddess even ended up in my life?
But remind me. I think you told me a long time ago.
So a few years, it's only been a few years. Like I've always loved and like really secretly, but as a healer, I thought I had to be of the light and a really nice person. And I'm like really smashing the fuck out of that right now.
Mhm.
Loving it. And it's wonderful. Anyone who needs help? No, don't ask me.
No, yeah, that's a lesson of the goddess too. Is boundaries, decisiveness. Yeah.
Yeah, I take consultations from my email. So, so I was doing these. I moved into this place temporarily in Seattle before we took a leap out of town, and I was doing these sound baths, journeys out of the basement, and this woman showed up because a friend of hers heard about a thing from a friend of hers. And she showed up, and I think it was after the first sound bath, she sat up and she wrote something down. And she was like, "This is from my guide to you." Right. And she didn't say anything else. She's a very smart woman. So she didn't like overshare. Right. But what it said was the shaman's job is to carry the shadow for the tribe.
Mm.
It's a big one. It's kind of like what I'm chewing on now is you will see everybody's shit, especially when they all come to you about whatever the shit they're working on. And then you still have to go to the grocery store and the weddings and like the birthdays and love them no matter their shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure other people who are like counselors understand that, right? People of faith. So she left that. And then she like left and came back the next week and she was like, "Oh, so I just want to let you know that like I wrote that. It's not my handwriting. And I wrote it with my non-dominant hand. And my guide is Lilith." And I was like, whoa. I didn't even know what to think about this chick, right?
Yeah.
But she just kind of kept showing up and she's hella chill, like really cool and not overbearing about it, but just kind of like take a moment to say something thoughtful. And then this bond started forming, and all of a sudden I felt this like other being show up. And I thought it was the Mary Magdalene, the work that we had been doing and like a continuation of,
Yeah.
but it really felt like a deepening past that gate of the feminine.
Right.
And then that November, no, it was December, I went down to the jungle and I did a series of ceremonies with ayahuasca with a teacher of mine. I was supposed to go down and have 6 ceremonies. The first ceremony blew my fucking mind. I could barely hold my shit together. And I was told in that ceremony that like I didn't have to do any other medicine. This was going to be the everything and the it. And I am a daughter of Lilith.
Right.
And I remember saying that over and over. I am a daughter of Lilith. I am a daughter of Lilith.
Is
But
she?
not in this way that
Sorry.
like I'm so special. But that all of the feminine, all of the women that we are a daughter of Lilith, and that we have this trauma to process.
And I was going to say, she carries the shadow of the culture,
Yeah.
the perception of the, dangerous feminine. She is one of the prime holders of that shadow.
Yeah.
Her and
Her
Mary.
and Rishka, I'll be like, word bitches.
Oh, Mary Magdalene. It's like all of them.
Yeah.
with that
Yeah. Yeah. So that was it's like kind of where it started, and I've flirted in and out. I've been hesitant. I don't want to dive into this because there's just so much that I think is fan fiction about Lilith, for lack of a better, and not a lot of good source text.
Mhm.
So, but as the internet provides, if I keep digging, I find little things that I'm like, okay, that actually sounds right in
Yeah.
the direction I'm going.
Yeah.
And it is more about like, oh, I turned to Kyle, my husband, last night, I think it was, and I was like, listen, what we have programmed in our mind as healthy relationships or happiness or like a responsible adult future doesn't work anymore,
Mm.
because we're still thinking the way our parents brought us up, but now we're in a completely different reality.
Wow. Yeah.
And this is something I'm excited to see. I mean, I know it's going to be really uncomfortable for a lot of people to shift in this micro macro way, but it really is the essence of sitting with this divine feminine darkness and this chaos being always part of the creation.
Right.
Like, this isn't always hard and bad. It's kind of a gift.
It is a gift. It's creative. It's generative.
Yeah.
It's like where we come from and where we go back to.
Yeah. We
So,
love creative boxes.
and creativity is messy and it's scary. I mean, like I haven't seen Birth, but you've seen Birth. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and it's messy.
Yeah.
And in the past, and in some countries still today, it's dangerous. Women literally die.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
so
It's what's considered the battlefield for women.
right.
It's where you sit your life on that line.
That's right. and women are willing to do it to perpetuate the human species.
Because I was thinking about earlier, what if nothing died? Like if nothing died,
Awful.
oh, good God. The Senate would be the worst.
Get them out of there. Get them out.
Haven't they crumbled into dust yet? Jeez Louise.
Oh my goddess. Oh.
Keeping it simple,
That's right.
which I think is going to be the theme for 2021. Minimize, simplify. So I start by calling in the song by letting myself play. There's a golden eye. It's in my mind. And it's showing me everything in divine time. There's a golden eye inside my mind. And it's telling me everything divine time. I was born with codes inside my bones. I am an ancient soul. This galaxy is my home. Oh, I was born with codes inside my bones. I am an ancient soul. This galaxy is my home. Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme I was it floats inside my bones. And on this earthly plane, I serve my purpose, divine soul. I was born with codes inside my bones, and my ancient soul always remembers my way home. The golden eye inside your mind, it reassures everything in divine time. Soul ancestral beliefs, I go divinity. I release all my ancestral beliefs. I know my own source of divinity. You, me. In your eyes is my divinity. You, me. In your eyes I see my own divinity. You and me. Just a little love note from my heart to yours.
Yes. Thank you, my darling. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just adore you and your songstressing.
Thanks for being my muse today.
Would you like to tell people how they can find out more about your work and what you offer?
Mm. You can hit up yakuhouse.com. That's my website for any guided shamanic journeys. There's some pre-recorded with some beautiful surround sound, and then there's also, if you want something that's customized, there's an offering for that. And then if you want just like musics and funs and also full moon, new moon meditations, you can hit up my Patreon, which is also Yaku House, and Instagram, which is Yaku House. I also have a podcast where I say some really unpopular and unconventional things. So
That means this was pretty tame.
yes, man. Yeah.
You got to speak your truth.
Right. You know, it's I'm finding that if I have the place where I'm like, if you want to go hear it and know that I don't care what you think, head right on over there.
Good for you.
Yeah, because I love to share and I love information, but it's like, you know, not necessary for all of us to need other people to validate us all the time. And it's a big practice. Is right now I'm really coming this corner where I'm like, you know what, I really do like myself a lot. I just am not always happy about being a human at this moment in time.
A lot of times it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if anyone wants to hear me fucking bitch about it, there's my podcast.
Okay, fabulous. And they can find your podcast also on your website?
Yeah, should be able to. If anything, it's also on Spotify. It's called Medicine Tongue.
Cool. Okay. I'll leave some links in the text box below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can find me on Instagram, you'll find everything else.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I love you so much. Thank you so much for sitting with me today and for sharing your beautiful heart.
This is so much fun.
It was
Thank you.
So much fun. It was so much fun. For everybody at home, thank you so much for being here. If you like what you saw, then please hit like, please share, please comment. And I also have a Patreon page. So if you're interested in supporting Journey to the Goddess there, then head on over to my Patreon page, Journey to the Goddess. I also have some cool new Journey to the Goddess merchandise. Some new Journey to the Goddess merchandise. Oh, you can't see it that well.
Oh my goddess.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mugs and t-shirts and eco-friendly tote bags.
Ooh, yes.
So you can find that on my website too. So awesome. I guess until next time, I'll talk to you soon, Kate. But for everybody else, until next time, ciao.